I got this phone call from Kathy in a near panic saying, can you come and talk about something about your business and how everything, how does the show work and how do you do what it is that you do? Because many of you have watched an episode or two of Small Business Celebration on YouTube, and it just looks like it's just rather effortless. It all just kind of flows right along. The magic is instantaneous. And the reality is there's, of course, a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And I could go through all the technical stuff with all the cameras and all the lighting and the audio and the hours of editing, all that sort of stuff. But I decided to bore you to tears instead. So, one of the things I wanted to broach with all of you is something that you can take away, at least a nugget, something that you can use today for your business. It's the art of conversation. Now, the art of conversation is one of these kind of things where the whole intent is to make you look good by making somebody else look better. The whole idea is making you look good by making somebody else look better. For Small Business Celebration, the way we go through and we do things, the standard operating procedure is we start off with a pre-interview phone call once the guest is selected. Send them a guest packet. We actually do the interview. We edit, post, do social media. And then I send an audio copy off to Danny that he goes ahead and he broadcasts every Saturday morning on Outlaw 95.9. But the real secret sauce to what we do is the conversation. That's why we have more than 50,000 downloads a month just on Small Business Celebration, not counting our sister show, Meat and Potatoes, that we've split off onto its own channel because of its popularity. Dr. Amar Patel, the host of the Psychology of Conversation podcast, says the Small Business Celebration podcast is a weekly clinic on how to elevate your prospects so others want to do business with them. If you remember the great Zig Ziglar, he once said that if you help enough people get what they want, you get what you want. That's the root of the philosophy of what it is that we do. People also do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. So when we go through and we do an interview and a conversation on Small Business Celebration, the show is actually broken up into 3 parts. We help people go and get to know them. Then we help get them to like them. And we finish by giving them the ability to trust them. The question is how do you get from point A, the know, to trust through like? It's conversation for the win. Now, a large part of what I've learned over the process of how to do this actually comes from many of you. Believe it or not, I listen and I pay attention. I listen to how you go through and do conversation. How do you talk to people? How do you engage people in conversation? How do you drive a conversation? Imagine some of you right now are shaking in your boots. How dare somebody listen to what we have to say? But as I go through some of these questions and the way we do things, some of these things may ring a bell. I'm going to use last week's episode as an example. If you haven't watched this episode, it's a hoot. It starts off with a trailer crashing on the 58 freeway and shattered glass all over the freeway. It's a great way to start the show. But both Dave and Tyler, wonderful guests. And if you want to learn more about Skyline and the people that run the business, it's a great episode to watch. But the next set of questions that I'm going through are all based on this particular episode. Identity before information. One of the things that you can do when you're having a conversation with somebody is you go through, before you even pull out of them on who they are and what it is, You go through and you give them credibility right from the beginning. What have they done that they have accomplished of significance? In this case, they did the retail stores for Rolex. I don't know about you, but that's no small feat. They're also remodeling some of the stores for Rolex. That's the initial key right there. This is how you start the conversation. What have they done to be successful to other people? You don't give generic praise. Oh, you're an absolutely wonderful people. No, you give very specific praise about something that they've done. In this case, they have a 32,000 square foot shop. They did 18 stores, 18 Rolex stores. Well done, you. The next thing is you go through and you start creating emotional safety through humor. Tyler's laughing because the example I use on this, when you're in a conversation with people, even people that you know have known for a long time, very often people are apprehensive about talking to you about something that they're afraid that you'll find out about. It can be something as simple as what my kids did the last week. They want to talk about, oh, we went ahead and they won the swim meet. What they don't want to talk about is she had to borrow somebody else's towel because she forgot hers. How you overcome that is you start talking about emotional safety through humor. And in Tyler's case, we're going through and we're talking about him being the successor to the family business. He'll be the third generation. And how do you break the ice on that? I told Tyler, don't sink the ship. When you're going through and you're having this conversation with people, you ask very specific questions about moments, not abstract. You don't talk about the weather, unless they're a meteorologist. But you ask very specific moment questions. Has Tyler had that moment where he's realized that he can take over the business? You ask very specific questions, but questions that go through and zero in to the point that you're actually listening. You're actually listening to what the other person is saying. You're acknowledging who they are and what they're doing. And you help go back and you reflect back on the meaning of what it was that they talked about. You help them understand that what they're doing is significant. It's important. It's not something to just drive past and wave. Introduce productive tension. No conversation, like any good story, doesn't go anywhere if there isn't conflict. We are not talking about end-of-the-world fisticuffs. We are not talking about going through and creating a part of the conversation where I'm going to go get that person. You're going through and you're asking questions that involve risk, which encourages an honest reaction out of people. You're going, have you ever had a moment when something was too big, too complicated, too difficult? Or in this conversation, has Tyler ever brought a job into Skyline where his father said, absolutely not. Don't do that. Why is this important in any conversation? Because now you're engaging in the conversation where you're having a person go through and talk about what they have overcome, why they have overcome. And you do this because you've been listening. You've been paying attention. And they know that, and they understand. This is one of my favorite questions that I love to ask in the show. Tell me your favorite horror story. This is, and the addendum to this, I don't usually say this on the show, but I do say it in the pre-interview phone call. Tell me the story you like to tell people after your third margarita. One of my favorite stories that I like to use as an example is several seasons ago, I interviewed a roofer. And the roofing company they have this conveyor belt that goes through and sends asphalt shingles up on top of the roof so that the work people don't have to try to haul them up manually. And he had a job on a 3-story building the day after Super Bowl Sunday. And let's just say the person that was operating the conveyor belt was still recovering from Super Bowl Sunday. And he let one of the controls slip. The conveyor belt swung over and started depositing 500-pound asphalt shingle pallets into the cab of the truck. This is something at the time where you sit there and you cringe at, but a week later, a month later, a year later, yeah, you're laughing about the story. The importance of these kinds of stories when you're engaged in conversation is nobody wants to do business with Superman. Everybody wants to do business with Clark Kent. Anybody who is perfect is a red flag. When you go through and you have a conversation and you tell your favorite horror story and you encourage them to tell about their horror story, they show and they demonstrate a relatability to you and them and everybody else around them that they're human. We all make mistakes. We all have victories. We all have challenges. And those are the people we want to do business with. People who put on the facade of being perfect, yeah, they're hiding something. And we all know it. Frame pain into wisdom. What did you learn from this horror story? The moral of the story is, and I'm not going to give away the horror story in Tyler's episode, but let me tell you, it's pretty funny. Future identity framing. This is something that's very crucial in every conversation you have. What does the future look like? Where are you planning on going? What are you planning on accomplishing? What's important to you, your family, and the people all around you? Because nobody wants to sit there and be friends or do business with somebody that isn't going anywhere, that isn't doing anything. Do you think people want to do business with a radio station owner that hasn't changed the paint, that hasn't changed the carpets, that lives out of town? Or would you rather hear the story about the guy who hasn't slept in 3 weeks, who's had to go through and take a portable generator up to the mountain to run his tower, and leaving his family behind in the middle of winter, so that his business can operate? You tell me. Validate generational transfer emotionally. That is a mouthful. The key to this is what you shares matters, and you recognize and reassure. Meaning, back to the previous idea, what does the future look like? Not only that, but what are you doing to impact future generations today? When you have this as part of your conversation, and you're talking to people, you're talking to prospects, you're talking to just anybody else in general, what you're helping them to realize is that they matter. What they're doing is significant. It's important. It doesn't matter what they do for a living, as long as it's legal and ethical. It can be any line of work that they choose. What they do matters. Because we as business owners, we are the single biggest driver of the US economy. So what are you doing for the future? And when you have that as part of the conversation with other people, and you ask them what are they doing of significance, now you have an interesting conversation. You have an engaged conversation. You have a conversation people want to be with. The other part of this is nobody likes to be told, you will do this, you will do that, you will have a nice day. People like to be taught. People like to be taught through stories. Every major philosopher in human history has not taught by bullet points. They have all taught by story. People learn through stories. So as you have a conversation, and this is one of my favorite things about here at EAKC, I can't tell you how much I've learned from so many of you from the stories you've told. Because that's how we learn the roadblocks. That's how we learn the landmines. That's how we learn, don't step here, do that instead. Use contrast to reveal values. One of the things that I had in this conversation with Dave and Tyler, Skyline Cabinetry is not the cheapest shop in town. They don't even pretend to be the cheapest shop in town. In fact, there are plenty of shops that will build far inferior cabinetry than they. And we talk about what differentiates them from everybody else. The important part of this is not to go through the boilerplate, well, we stem from quality and we enact positive customer service and we strive to give 110%. Yeah, we've all heard that before. But what people really want to find out is we don't participate in a race to the bottom. We don't care about a race to be the best price in town. This is what differentiates. And when you're having a conversation about using contrast, what you're doing in that conversation of contrast is differentiating yourself and giving yourself legitimacy. Narrate instead of interrogate. So often when we're in a conversation, we walk into that conversation with blinders on. We want to hit this particular objective with this person at this time to do this thing to accomplish this, that, and the other. And what ends up happening with that is we steamroll over the person with whom we're having a conversation. Whereas if we go through and narrate and have them tell us the story, or have us go through and give us the examples, now we're having a conversation that's narration instead of bullet point, and you don't have that feeling that the person you're with is being run over. This one is the hardest one for me. Listen for emotional energy spikes. I am an introvert by nature. If I had my druthers, I'd live in a windowless room, in a windowless office, and have Domino's pizza delivered 3 times a day. I grew up in Ridgecrest, California, which is the home of China Lake Naval Weapons Center, and it's all a bunch of engineers. A whole bunch of engineers who emotional intelligence is at about a 0. So it's one of those kind of things where I have a difficult time listening for emotional spikes. Emotional spikes is when the person that you're speaking with goes through and tells you something that has meaning to them. For some of us, this is the hardest part. What is it in their body language? What is it that they're doing? Are they suddenly sitting back in their chair? Are they suddenly folding their arms? Or are they suddenly leaning forward? Are they going through, is there a slight glisten in their eye? What are the signs from the human body physical perspective that are telling you that you're having an engaged conversation with people? And that is an entire conversation and a dissertation unto itself. But it's incredibly important when you're having this conversation. What is their reaction? What is the feedback they are giving you, intentionally or not, that's helping you guide that conversation and helping you relate and helping them relay what their needs and their wants? The core psychological strategy. Now, some of you, or I should say eagle-eye EAKC members, may have noticed that there were colors in the backgrounds of each of those slides. Why is that? Have any of you heard of DISC? For those that haven't, DISC is D-I-S-C, and they're, in very simple terms, 4 types of personalities. People that are direct, people that are high intellect, people that are very much other people that want everybody to work together, and people that are very detail-oriented. The key to having these conversations, especially with somebody that you don't know, is to ask questions that cover all 4 personality types. And on Small Business Celebration, that's where the money is. That's the reason why people come back week after week after week, is because it doesn't matter what your personality type is. You're going to find something that's going to relate to you and your personality type. And as you go forward from today, listen and pay attention. Use questions, engage in conversation, and try to zero in on the things that relate to people most. And that's conversation, and that's my exit music.
It was beautiful.
That's conversation for the win. If you'd like to subscribe, we have 2 channels now. The first one is Small Business Celebration, the main show, and then our sister show, Small Business Celebration Meat and Potatoes. The Meat and Potatoes has taken on a life of its own. That's why it's been split off onto its own channel. And come in July, we're in pre-production now to be producing 3 additional YouTube channels for other people, all based on the art of conversation.
Very cool.
Ready?
So raise your hand. Raise your hand that you have been interviewed by Michael and have been on his show. Pretty good.
Pretty good group.
Yeah.
Sure.
I love it. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Mike, you and I were talking about positioning yourself in a conversation.
Right.
Can you explain to them how to do that?
Okay. So, excuse me. Positioning oneself in a conversation is incredibly important. How you present yourself in front of somebody else is key. Because nobody likes to have a conversation or do business with somebody that's afraid. People want to have conversations that people want to do business with people they know, they like, they trust, people that have confidence. So part of positioning is when we have a conversation on the show, we're right across from each other. We're directly in front of each other. We're going through and giving solid eye contact. And by the way, I cheat. I do a lot of cheating on the show. When I'm having a conversation, when I have a conversation like I'm talking to somebody gregarious like Kevin Burton here, do you think I look at him in the eyes?
No.
No. Right here. You look at him right here. Okay? And I'll give you a social media tip on this. When you're having a conversation and you're looking to the camera for social media, you look straight off, but you keep your eyes just off center, and your eye looking straight at the camera, and you don't blink. Blinking on social media gives the impression that you are intimidated by the camera.
Sign of weakness.
It's a sign of weakness. I hope that helped. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. So in order to be a guest on the show, you have to have been in business to be a guest on the show, you have to have been in business for at least 5 years and be the owner of the business. So that's the criteria on it. The reason is around season 3, we discovered through our analytics that the majority of our listeners are in years 3, 4, or 5 of their business. So they've survived the first 2 years, yay! But now they're fixing all the things they did. And the reason we have guests that come on that have been in business for at least 5 years is it's really hard to give advice to that audience if you've never done it yourself. And that is why. Any other questions? Like, subscribe, and make sure you listen to Outlaw Saturday mornings, 9 a.m.
Okay.
Thank you.